this week's episode of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Diamond is Unbreakable. Koichi and Rohan Kishibe go on an adventure through a haunted alley, where they actually meet a pair of creepy ghosts. First, a couple of things. Yes, Rohan Kishibe is back. He started as a villain, now he's kind of a hero. It looks like he's going to be one of the main members of the group. When he appeared in this episode, I was shocked. I didn't expect him to be so friendly with Koichi. But honestly, seeing the two characters play off of each other is really great. Not to mention, Rohan's abilities are freaking great. They're incredibly useful for a lot of the situations that they get themselves involved in, and I love the fact that his stand, Heaven's Door, is actually starting to manifest as a more humanoid shape. It actually looks a lot like that character that he was drawing in his manga a couple of episodes ago, so I really love the attention to detail there. And then, of course, there is the ghost in this episode. That's right, it's not too strange that there would be a ghost in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I mean, hell, the series started out with vampires, so honestly, everything's kind of coming full circle here. But the main story of this episode is that Rohan is trying to find his childhood home, because remember, he did grow up in Morio for the first 4 years of his life. However, after that, he couldn't remember anything, and there's probably a pretty good reason for that, and we're going to learn more about that in the coming episodes of the series. But he wants to find his childhood home so he can look for inspiration for his manga, and him and Koichi are walking around this old neighborhood where all of these houses are abandoned, when suddenly they're confronted by this cute girl who goes by the name of Raimi, who tells them this really creepy-ass ghost story about this house, where there was this girl who was living there, and one night she heard this weird dripping noise coming from her parents' room, which was like the sound of blood hitting the floor. But she herself was not scared because she had her trusted dog Arnold right there sleeping under the bed, and whenever she felt scared, she would put her hand right under the bed and her dog would lick her hand, reassuring her that everything is fine. However, as the noise intensified, she walked out into the hallway and she saw her dog dead, throat slit, hung up on a coat hanger, and that's when she realized, if my dog is right there, then what the hell just licked my hand? Well, she was actually killed by this guy who was hiding out there the entire time, and this killer still exists in Morio to this day, still killing people at random. Now, here's the twist. The girl telling this story, Raimi, actually is that girl. She's a ghost, and she's even joined by her dog, which is also taken the form of a ghost, which essentially just looks like a dog with a slit throat with blood constantly coming out of it, because we always have to remember that the author of this series just loves seeing animals in extreme pain. This scene is really weird and fucked up, because you'd almost expect this girl to be somewhat malicious, but she's actually looking for the help of Rohan and Koichi. She wants them to try and find the real killer to stop these people from being killed, because she always sees the people who are killed right above her as they're getting ready to transition into the next world. However, she can't do that yet. I'm imagining this probably can't happen until they end up taking out this killer, and at the end of the episode, we might have already been introduced to this guy. Hell, we might even been seeing hints to this character through some of the earlier episodes of the series, because if you guys remember, there were all of those previous scenes where there was this one guy who's going around to random people in Morio and basically just cutting their hands off and taking them for himself, and they never addressed that until this episode right here. And Koichi actually tells Josuke and Okiyos everything that happened, and they're going to try and sort of assess the situation, but they say that they don't need to rush. They're not going to run into the killer that quickly. But as Koichi is walking out into the street, he's about to be hit by a car, which just so happens to be driven by the actual killer himself. And apparently he goes by the name of Kira, which I think is actually perfect. Kira, killer, it kind of works. But this guy is just fucked up in almost every freaking way I can think of. One of the most disturbing anime characters I've ever seen, because he's so calm and collected, driving around in his car with severed hands, and when he gets out of his car and goes to his house, he actually takes the severed hand of this woman to clean up blood stains on his seat by using that hand to pick up a tissue and wipe with it. He then uses the hand to pick up her purse as well, and just casually walks into his house. This is some fucking weird Norman Bates, Hannibal Lecter kind of shit, and frankly, it just freaks me out. This is, without a doubt, one of the scariest villains that I have seen from the JoJo's series. Now, as if that's not enough to cap off the series, we also get to learn that Rohan himself as a baby, was actually in the same house as Raimi when these murders took place. He was only 4 years old, and that's why he doesn't remember these things. His parents were away, so he was staying at their house, and I'm guessing after these events went down and he was the lone survivor, that's why they decided to move him and his family to an entirely different city. So he's connected to all of the events that are going on here. So Rohan is definitely going to be a much more important character here, and the introduction of Kira, who is just such a disturbing villain. Man, this was a crazy episode of JoJo, to say the least. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Diamond is Unbreakable? A very slow episode for like the first 75% of it, but it really hit it home. I really love the introduction of another female character because let's face it, we need them in the JoJo series. This thing is practically a sausage fest at this point. It sucks that she's actually dead and she's a ghost and she's only confined to this spot, but it's still refreshing to see a character like that nonetheless. Not to mention, she's good. She's not evil. I almost expected her to be just another stand user who was fucking with the characters. So I like the twist that she was actually a ghost. That way we're not just sort of seeing the same story every single week in JoJo. I also really like the fact that Rohan is tied to her, and just the fact that Rohan is returning is a really big deal. I mean, he's a weird character. Like, every character's weird in JoJo, to be perfectly honest. But I'm glad that he's going to be very helpful to the group, especially because his abilities are just so damn useful, especially because there's this one scene in the episode where Koichi and Rohan actually have to return to the living world, because when they're in this, like, ghost area talking to this girl, they're, like, in between the living and dead world, and in order to return, they have to walk down this alley and go towards this white light, but they can't turn around, because if they turn around, they're going to be dragged, and their souls are going to be taken away, and they're all going to be dead, and Koichi just starts hauling ass towards this white light at the end of the episode, because he's freaked out. Anyone would be. I'd be pissing my pants if all of this shit was going on, and he turns around because he hears Raimi speaking, but that's not actually her, and as he's about to be dragged in, Rohan actually writes in his weird little Facebook for him to not be able to see anything, so he's actually able to escape that way. Showing again that Rohan's abilities, the Heaven's Door, is freaking awesome. I also really like the fact that despite the fact that Koichi's stand actually, like, evolved in a sense, he can actually call out each form, especially considering things that are going on. Like, he calls out Echoes, Act 1. He can call out Echoes, Act 2. There's almost certainly going to be an Act 3 as well, so I cannot wait to see what that's going to be like. And again, this episode proved that Koichi is just a fantastic side character who might as well be the main character of the series at this point. I love that they can take the side characters and make an episode all about them, and it feels just as significant as one that has Josuke in it. That's something that can be really hard to do in a lot of other series, but the side characters in JoJo are awesome. They're always really important, and that's what made this episode right here just so fantastic. Not to mention the introduction of Kira, who is just such a psychopathic bastard. I can't wait to learn more about this guy and see the interactions he's going to have with Josuke and their team. So this was another freaking great episode of JoJo right here. A little slow in the first half of the episode, but still very atmospheric with lots of great little action moments, lots of really creepy ghost stories, and the introduction of a main villain. I'd say this one was pretty damn stellar right here, but like I said, it was a tad slow, so I am going to give this week's episode a 4 out of 5. That being said, it was still another fantastic episode of Diamond is Unbreakable, and if you're a JoJo fan, you definitely need to check it out. But if any of you did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. Are you excited to see the return of Rohan Kishibe? What did you think of the introduction of Kira, the hand-loving killer? And what do you want to see from the rest of Diamond is Unbreakable? You guys are kick-ass! If you want to help support Super Kami Guru 9000, why don't you subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with all your friends. You guys know the sales pitch at this point. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby!